Hello, we are here for one more lesson of this AxisVM training course, and the topic for today will be a group of functionalities that we call the editing tools. So this is a set of commands, functionalities, options that we can group in this big topic. So the idea today is to create a couple of different situations to show you what are these editing tools. And we will start to make a couple of entities. It doesn't matter much what are those entities, so just creating a couple of functions. And okay, we have these elements, and the first functionality I would like to talk about is something called the cursor identification. And this cursor identification, it is a functionality that changes the graphical display of the cursor depending on the element, depending on the area on the graphical display. So, for example, we have this normal setting with the cursor, with this cross. So if I go on top of my element, you see that I'm displaying an arc. Now it's a different symbol because I'm displaying a line. And when I go, for example, to the midpoint, I get a different setting. Or if I go to the node, I have another setting. Or, okay, this is the same. So this has a lot of different types of displays. For example, I can add a support to a node. And okay, it doesn't matter. And you see now I have also a different kind of graphical display in the cursor. So the idea of this is to understand that we have different graphical displays for different meanings on the area, on the drawing area. And we have a complete list in our theoretical course, so you can consult that information to help you understand all the different options and all the different displays the cursor can have. Still regarding this topic, just to notice that under settings, options, and gradient cursor editing, we have this option here, cursor identification, which sets the size of the cursor identification area. So a bigger setting will create a kind of a radius around the cursor to identify these things that we've been showing. Then we have another functionality which we call the entering of coordinates numerically. And this is something that we already talked in other previous lessons, which is the possibility to enter the coordinates of points, of elements, numerically. And this can be set directly under these coordinates windows, where we can click in one of these entering dialog boxes, and now we can enter the numbers, or we can simply click on the letter that corresponds to the option we have here, for example X. So if I click X, you see that the dialog box is highlighted, and now I could enter a value. Okay, so this is also the possibility to enter the coordinates numerically speaking. Then we have another nice feature, which is something we call the measurement of a distance. So we can measure distance between 2 points, also with some, it's not a trick, it's really a functionality of the system. But the idea is to make use of something inside, which is just a second, to the work planes. In the work planes, we can, for example, go on top of one point. If I want to know the distance between this point and, for example, this point, I can go here and make a click with my right mouse button, and to create a temporary work plan where I can, for example, insert the XY0. So I create a temporary work plan. You see that I have 0 in my coordinate window when I'm on top of this node. And now if I go on top of this node under this D, I have the distance, or under the dx, y, or z, I have the corresponding axis distance. So I can measure a distance also with this little, I would say, trick. Okay, to go on the global model workspace. So simply go and click here, or with my right mouse button and again work plan, and choose the global model space. Then we have another interesting feature which we call the constraint cursor movements, and it is something that we can do with the help of pressing the shift key. So I have my when I try to create geometry, if I want to create a node, I have my free cursor under graphical area. But if I click in my keyboard on the shift and maintain it pressed, like I will do now, you see that my cursor now, it's no longer free, but it is constrained to an angle that you can see. It's in this particular case 45 degrees, but it can be 30 or 75 or whatever, depending on the area that we have our cursor. So the idea here it is to have a constrained movement like this, maintaining the shift key pressed, and this can be also set under options, editing, and we have the constraint angle. We have this for the steps, and on the editing we have this constraint angle for 15 degrees increment. So it's also a nice feature to have this constraint also done, and depends on the point. So it's basically something that you can explore a little, because it will help you a lot on the creation of geometry under the insertion of controlled dimensions and measurements. Then we have something else called the locking coordinates, and the idea here is the possibility to lock the value of a coordinate so that we can do it under this locking. So we can lock a coordinate. For example, if we click on a combination of keys under your keyboard. So for example, we can do it doing the Control Alt and the corresponding letter. For example, the X. So I can do Control Alt X, and you see that this dialog box on this coordinate window assumes a rectangle, and now my cursor is also fixed on the X coordinate. Okay, and we can do this. We can do the escape, or simply click under here to free. So it's also a possibility to lock the coordinates with this combination Control Alt and then the letter correspond to the option we have here. Finally, we have something called the auto intersect. And the auto intersect, if you see on the geometry we've created, and I will create a new one, when I create, for example, a line, you see that on the intersections I create automatically nodes, and the entities are automatically break down in simple entities. This is a functionality called the auto intersection. This is the standard behavior, but we can also change this kind of behavior. So if we go also under settings, options, and then editing, we have a function called the auto intersect, which is somewhere auto intersect. It is highlighted now. I will unselect it and do the OK, and we'll try to make now another line, And as you can see now, the line did not create nodes on the intersections, neither breaks on those intersection points. So this is the functionality you can find under this auto intersect. All of this group of things that we mentioned, it is under this big topic of the editing tools. So I hope that this helped you to have a couple of more tools for your work. And again, as we say many times, any help about these or other topics, we are here to give you all the necessary support.